Hey, I'm back. So a lot of people don't understand how the application process works and they mess up a lot of their own applications and then they end up missing jobs. So I figured I'd make a video on how to make a proper CV, how to apply, and how to actually pass job interviews. So first, we need to understand the process from their perspective. So they have the big dog. Usually he's the CTO or project manager, might even be the CEO directly if you're talking about smaller companies. It doesn't matter. This guy's at the top of the company. Then he hires a team lead for the specific project they're doing. It might be pen testing or SOC or whatever. And then that person needs to build a team, and they either look for recruits themselves and they act as the recruiter, or they have somebody in HR that they instruct and that person looks for employees instead. There's this common misconception that the HR person isn't very technical and doesn't know what to look for, but that's not quite the case because they're specifically instructed to only look after specific things. So the team leader might say, I want somebody that has a Security Plus certification, has worked as a SOC analyst for at least a few months, has a decent understanding of CM tools and networking and stuff, and should be able to pass a technical interview in which we talk about pretty much every security concept that somebody working in blue teaming should know. Then the recruiter writes down those notes and those requirements and lists them in the job posting. After that, when people apply, the recruiter looks over their CVs and their list of skills and whatnot and makes sure that what they wrote corresponds to what the team leader wants from his employees. So no, you putting the Google search there is not gonna make HR go ooh. And then comes your arch nemesis. Applicant tracking systems, ATS. Oh boy, they made my life very hard in the beginning because people kept telling me that I need to make custom CVs and I refused to listen. I just took it as a tip rather than a requirement, but it's very important that you make custom CVs for every application, but we'll get to that later. So the applicant tracking system was put in place because basically a lot of unqualified people kept applying, and the companies that put out the job postings were tired of going through hundreds of CVs of people that had no idea what they were doing and having to filter 90% of them out. So they found a system that matches keywords from their job posting and whatever they input into the program, and then it checks it against the resume of the person that is applying, and then that way it can figure out if the person is a good match based strictly on the keywords. They have other options like filtering for education and years of experience and stuff like that, but most of it is based around keywords. The stupid part about this is that somebody can be completely overqualified. He could have worked at Google for 20 years, been a senior engineer, and he could be applying for a job that he's way more than qualified for. But if he doesn't have those custom keywords that the ATS is looking for, he might just get rejected outright, even though he's probably the best person for the job. That's why it's very important to have customized, tailored CVs for every application. So whenever you're going to hear me talking about ATS or ATS hacking or whatever, this is what I'm talking about. Before you apply to any job, I would say it's important to actually be qualified for that job and not just to annoy recruiters by matching their keywords and ATS hacking your way to the top just for them to see that you're unqualified and then rejecting you anyway. But if you are qualified for the job, you can ask AI to go over the job for you and to extract the important keywords, and you can specify that you're looking for ATS filtering or whatever. And then it's going to give you a bunch of keywords for skills, soft skills, maybe a customized summary. Then you edit your CV and then you send it to the specific company, and sometimes you also make a cover letter while you're at it. When it comes to the cover letter, you shouldn't use AI for that, or you should maybe generate part of it with AI and then edit it yourself, because they're most likely gonna use an AI detector for your cover letter to see how lazy you were. And that's also going to play a part in them deciding if they want to hire you or not. If you're not going to be applying to a lot of jobs, you can just do it manually every time. But if you are going to apply for a lot of jobs, then you should probably automate it. I wrote my own system. I have a Python script that automatically edits my CV and then changes everything around. It has a custom summary, technical skills, soft skills, all of that stuff. And then it also generates me a cover letter, and I can just submit them to the company that I'm applying to. And the whole process just takes me a few seconds instead of several minutes. So it makes my life a lot easier. This is a mock CV that I made. You should use it as reference. I think this is a pretty good page structure. I chose to put education at the top because that way I can show off the certifications and courses and whatnot. And even though I don't have a degree, I can still show that I put in a lot of work and I spent a lot of extra time studying to make up for the fact that I don't have a degree, and I chose very relevant things like networking and OS courses rather than just learning the most random stuff that they teach in uni, like math. Then there's two skills sections, the work section And then very importantly, you should have a project section as well. When it comes to projects, I usually list a lot of the relevant projects for the job that I'm applying for. So if I'm applying for a SOC job, I will tell them about the customized Elk stack I made on Elk stack that I configured from scratch on a Linux machine. I made a fully operational CM, and then I might tell them about some web pen testing in TryHackMe or Portsfigure Academy, where I can give them a general understanding of how much web penetration testing I'm doing, because that's going to be a big part of working in SOC. Understanding the attacks that are going to take place on the servers and whatnot that I'm defending is going to be useful, and it shows that I know what I'm doing. I also have a lot of programming projects, but since programming is not that important for this position, I didn't want to list all of them, so I just mentioned that I had a lot of programming projects, but I didn't actually list them one by one in the CV itself. Although I did have a GitHub link, so if they wanted to know more details about my skill in programming, they could go to my GitHub. So that's one example of what you could do for a decent CV. I would say very importantly, if you do not have a degree and you will have a degree in the future, meaning that you're going to start uni next year or you're considering starting it, you can put it in there as degree expected by a certain year. Like you can put in the degree and say you're going to get it in 2028. Your certifications are going to be very important, and I would highlight them. I would put them in bold text. And then every course that you took that is relevant to what you're doing now, especially if it's a university course or something that's well recognized, you should just shove it in there to show that you took a bunch of courses and you tried to learn. This does not include random YouTube playlists. We're talking about more comprehensive courses here. If you have something useless like the Google search, you can also just throw that in there just for the sake of it. And that's generally how a decent CV should look. That is only part of it though, because a big chunk of your CV is going to be your projects and your external links like GitHub, TryHackMe, HackTheBox, whatever else. Bug bounty programs, HackerOne, whatever you choose what to specialize in. So the CV itself should be a summary of multiple sources coming together that show that you are good at what you will need to do for your job. When it comes to job interviews, I actually have most of them recorded, so I can just transcript them and make a whole separate video on what sorts of questions they asked me for what roles in the past. And I might make a more advanced video on that, but for now, if you're going to have your first job, let's say you go for SOC, which is a very common entry path, they're mostly going to ask you about stuff that you have on your Security Plus. So they're going to ask you about basic attack types and mitigations. What would you do if someone's DDoSing the network? What protections would you put in place? How would you fix the situation at hand? How would you stop it? Or they might ask you more generic questions like, what is a DOS compared to a DDoS? How would you stop a DDoS and how would you stop a DOS? What's the point of load balancers? How would you prevent XSS? How would you explain to a non-technical person what phishing is and how not to get phished? And just very basic SOC analyst questions. Like they never go into detail. They never really go into detail because it is an entry-level position and they understand that you don't have any in-depth experience or knowledge. So they try to keep it brief to make sure that you understand the basics. For more advanced positions, they're going to have a lot more technical questions and they're going to want you to get more into detail. I've seen this in pen testing interviews. Even though they were entry-level pen testing, the questions were a lot harder because it is a much harder domain than blue teaming or SOC, for example. And I've definitely seen this in senior positions. I've had interviews for senior SOC positions where they wanted people with over 5 years of experience and stuff like that. So yeah, the questions that they ask you in interviews are directly correlated with the difficulty of the role, the seniority level of the role, and specifically what they want from the company. So if you want to prepare for a job interview, just read their job post, check out all of the technology and the skills that they mention inside of the job post. Make sure that everything that you have on your CV you already know, or well, if you put it in there without knowing it, then get to know it. And then just look up some generic questions for that role. You can find them on Google, whatever sort of basic questions for that position. And try to see how many of those you can answer. You don't really have to grind this part out that much. It's not like very difficult companies to get into for software engineering, where they might ask you for a hour-long technical interview where you have to design specific algorithms and explain to them what you're doing and how to make them more and more efficient and explain the time complexity and stuff like that. So you don't really have to worry that much for entry-level positions, but the higher on you go, the harder they're gonna get, and they get quite hard. So keep that in mind. But yeah, that's about it for this video. I cannot believe how many views and subs I've been getting, and how many people have been reaching out to me on Discord and commenting on my videos. So I got a lot of really positive reviews. I got a lot of really positive comments and a lot of new people coming into the channel. So I'd like to thank everybody, and I'm glad I could help you guys. Just so you know, a lot of the people that came to me for help one-on-one, like I spent hours teaching them stuff on Discord, and in a few days they would quit. Like, people are so lazy and superficial. Very few of them actually stuck to it. In fact, out of around 13 people that came to me before I started making YouTube videos, only one person actually went through and even finished the Professor Messer playlist, which is only 16 hours in length. That's how superficial everyone else was. So if you're out there doing progress, if you're constantly grinding every day and trying to get a job or to improve, you're already on the right track. And because of how superficial the people around you are, you're gonna get very far if you keep it up and you keep going. So yeah, I'm glad you keep watching these videos. I'm glad that some of you already started learning Python or doing your Security Plus or whatever you're trying to do. Some of you told me that you work in different fields and now you're switching to cybersecurity and you're trying to learn it. And just know that all of the progress that you're doing is great, and a lot of people just go by with weeks and months of doing no progress. So it's gonna get you quite far if you keep it up. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. If you have any suggestions, then just drop them in the comments. I read every single comment, and see you guys later.